Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Ray, co-founder of MindBodySpirit.fm. And thanks for joining me for another Meet the Podcasters. And this is where I get to introduce you to one of our fabulous podcasters on the network and talk about the show and what's coming up and just kind of give you guys a taste of what's up if you're not familiar with this particular podcast. So today I'm happy to welcome, well, I consider him an old friend that we had worked together in the past. Author, psychotherapist, shamanic practitioner, Dr. Stephen Farmer, and he's the host of Dr. Stephen Farmer Healing for Your Soul. And he shares all of his wisdom on the podcast and great stories and readings, interviews, messages. So, Stephen, it's nice to connect with you.
Yeah, good to see you again, Diane. It's been a while. So thanks again
I
for
know.
having me here to introduce or to say more about my podcast.
Yeah, it's good to catch up with you. And I know you're an old pro at this. You did such a great job on Hay House Radio and sharing your message there. And you're lecturing, speaking, you're out there spreading the word. So I want to let people know a little bit first about shamanism, because I'd like to know how you got into it. I mean, you're a real therapist, you're the real deal, but you also bring in shamanic practices into your work. So what got you interested in shamanism?
It's a great question. Licensed psychotherapist. So I'm not sure I would say I was a traditional psychotherapist. I really studied a lot of different modalities in different ways, and particularly got very, very interested, as many people are, about trauma and how to recover from trauma, what it is, etc. In fact, my first book, which now is a little dated, but I'm pleased that I was starting to put my foot in the water. It's called Adult Children of Abusive Parents. Kind of a weird title, but it does say what the gist of the book is about. And then went on to a few other, a big pause there. And then when I was introduced to shamanism, I went on to create some more books and oracle cards. So the interest, I think, was always there. I never really had an active spiritual practice, or what I would call a spiritual practice. And shamanism isn't just a spiritual path, it's a path of healing, but it's a different kind of healing, but also one that's been around for as long as humans, have inhabited the earth. It's a way of working with spirit guides, certain methodologies that are fairly common, in different shamanic traditions. In doing so, provide other kinds of healing that are available. I found I was just totally drawn to it. I read a book on it. That's what started the whole. And then I went to a 2-day introductory course, and I left that course just on fire. I went, okay, this is my next step. That was 30 years ago. So wow. It's been with me for a long time. And then I went from there to various trainings. I want to honor Michael Harner, who I believe is an individual that has done the most to bring shamanism into contemporary culture. He's in the afterlife now, and is an ancestor in that way. So I found that blending it, or I should say, creating how do I work with clients? In what way do I work with them? And then at some point, I don't know, along the way, I realized I've got a whole range of possibilities, of what I can offer. Just a short example would be something from shamanic traditions across culture, and that's soul retrieval. And the premise is that there are times, like in trauma, where we lose a part of ourselves, or part of our soul, or a fragment of our soul. Some people believe or operate, say there's 3 souls and you lose one of those souls, something like that. But my training has been about fragmentation. If you think about it, it makes sense. After a traumatic experience, people are a little bit glazed over. They're impacted by it. Their body's impacted. They might hold themselves, any number of things like that. And I think it's, I really think that the treatment with soul retrieval as an option, it's not the only way to go, but I think it is an incredibly valuable shamanic treatment for people who have had trauma. And the thing is, based on my experiences, it works. Things start to shift around and change a little bit in response to the healing that takes place as as one who receives a treatment is able to integrate that lost aspect of their soul. I think more and more it's become more and more known about shamanism and what that entails, and I'm really glad to see that. I think it's for our times where people are like, what's going on in this world, this crazy world. I think it's a really valuable approach to healing and healing the planet, of healing the natural world, doing as much as we can to heal the natural world. And then on an individual or collective basis, being able to bring forth other kind of characteristics that may have gotten lost along the way, such as the example I just mentioned. So I love my work. I feel very blessed, very grateful to be able to do this work. And it's just been a very natural evolution. Back to your question, it's like I caught fire when I left that 2-day course. It's not about becoming a shaman. I consider myself a shamanic practitioner, and some people call me a shaman, but it's in a way it's just a name. But the implication is that there's certain kinds of traditions that are very common to many cultures, healing traditions that we can bring forth. Plus, and I'll say one more thing about it, you begin to understand as you work with shamanism in a very, very deeply felt way that the world is alive. That tree is, yes, it's a tree, but there's a life force in that tree. Sometimes we might even call it the spirit of that tree or animal,
Right.
the spirit of that animal. And as you well know, Diane, one of my books is called Animal Spirit Guides because, again, like our long ago ancestors, and as an aspect of the shamanic traditions cross-culturally, is communication, not just with the animal, but with the spirit of the animal. So when an animal shows up in an unusual way or repeatedly in a short piece of time, that's a simple 25-word or less teaching about pay attention to what this spirit of this animal that's an representative of the collective consciousness of the animal that will assist us in guiding us through our life path. And again, I'm very clear.
It's such a deep and rich system, and you share so much about the practices and the techniques on the podcast. And I really want, if people have an interest, and I think you're really tapping into something that is so needed right now, that people can explore these practices and these healing methods for what we're going through today. And these things that have been around for thousands of years that, indigenous cultures have used for so long, and that people are able to tap into that and use it to heal trauma today
Absolutely.
is so just so valuable. And I think with the animals too, I was just going to say, that's such a rich topic of exploration, because I remember you used to, or with your card decks, I remember you would pull cards and, give people readings for certain animals, or they would call and ask you about certain animals and things like that. And it's really valuable. It means something to people.
It really does. I think, often we're called to something like this. We go, wait a minute. Okay, maybe I've done psychotherapy, and that's been valuable. But now there's a hunger, for something more. And it isn't the only path, of course. It'd be silly to say that and be very fundamentalistic if I say that's the only path. But I'll tell you what, I was called to do this shamanic work, and I love it because people change, people heal. And I am a healer and I'm a teacher. That's my purpose, to be on this planet. And that manifests in different ways. And one of those certainly is the podcast as a means of conveying this kind of information, so that if somebody's curious, they can then investigate it further. Or if someone is called to, let's say, learning about animal spirit guides, learning about nature spirits, or learning about shamanism, more about shamanism, that I think it gives them some real tips about what to pay attention to. It's a very challenging time in many ways. And, we've never been in this situation before here on the earth. And we as humans that are called forth to do things like your service, yours and Tina's, to bring forth various people, to convey information that can help them go along their life path with a little greater ease, a little greater confidence, and understand that there is healing available. It's not just going, not only, qualify that, not just going to the doctor. That's, believe me, doctors are incredibly valuable, but also being able to explore these other areas, there's other ways of healing, to find again that connection with our spirit, to
Right.
know that there's a spirit in all things, as has been said.
And to recognize that as a whole person, that your spirit or soul, however, whatever you want to describe it, is such an important piece. It can, and when you bring that in, it can really be a big part of healing, whatever you're trying to heal, physically or emotionally.
Right. That's why the podcast I do is Healing Your Soul, because I think there's been a large disconnect that we've had,
Mhm.
from the awareness of our soul or our spiritual, that we are spirit in physical form. It really comes down to that. And so I and many other people I know are now promoting that as a way of bringing certain awareness to that fact. And I'll state it as a fact, is we're not just physical beings. That animal, this dog that I have, this beautiful dog I have, just every once in a while I'll just look at him and go, wow, this guy's a critter that in some ways operates pretty close to how I operate.
Right. What's going on in that brain,
Yeah,
their
yeah. But
heads.
more importantly, even in dreams, or when an apparition comes to you in some way, in dreams, or you're just in a waking state and something comes to you like that, or you see a vision of a huge pine tree, or you see a vision of, let's say, an elephant, where did that come from? That's part of what I teach in the podcast is, what do you do with that? Well, here's what you do. And I give very specific steps, simple too. It's not that hard. It just requires a certain uh, let go of any belief or disbelief, would be one way to put it, and allow information to come forth by asking the question, what message do you have for me? And that can be applied in so many ways. What message do you have for me? You've come to me into my consciousness somehow, physically or through a dream. Elephant, let's use that as an example, since that's come up recently too, by the way. Well, what's going on? Elephant showed up in my dream. What's going on with this? Oh, wait a minute. I heard Dr. Farmer talk about that. Okay, here's what you do. I'm going to, real simple. Practice though. Practice it, gang. Ask elephant spirit, not the physical elephant spirit. What's your message? And then see what comes forth. See what you see in your eyes, your sensations in your body, what you hear with the inner voice. And that, with your eyes too, it can be that once you ask the question with sincerity, you may be told to look around at something in the room that is a representation of the message, or you may close your eyes and see something in your mind's eye that gives you the message. It takes a little practice, but it's not that difficult to do. And again, on my podcast, I give you these kind of instructions that and suggestions as to how to go about living I would say living a spiritually directed life. And that can mean different things to different people. But a
Mhm.
spiritually directed life, I think, is a standard that I would like to hold up to everyone. Say, yeah, aim for that. Aim for that. Start practicing some of these things. And again, I refer to this. And again, thank you, you and Tina, for creating this wonderful vehicle, the podcast. And I've been able to bring some of that information, well, quite a bit of that information through the podcast.
Quite a
And
bit.
there will be more. There
Yeah.
will be more, as go on. So I invite you to, check it out and see, listen to a couple of them, see if it speaks to you. I think they will, because it's, as I say, I think it's more than it would be nice to be able to receive more guidance. But these days I see it as a necessity.
It is a necessity. And just your advice to just be quiet, for a minute and tune in and you give yourself a few minutes to, let the information sink in, and you will get messages. I mean, I have to ask you for myself, since I got you here, you're trapped for
Sure.
a couple
You
minutes.
got it.
So I have a couple of recurring animals that show up in my dreams. One of them is an alligator, and I don't particularly like alligators, and they're not sinister in the dreams. They're just kind of there.
Okay.
And the other one's been a dolphin.
All right. So that's what I would want to know about the alligator. Is it aggressive, or is it showing its teeth, or is it just there in
It's
some
kind of,
way?
it's just swimming there. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what I get. Okay. Now your job after we're done, maybe after
Think it
we've done
over.
recording, is to go ahead and ask, but let me respond to your question. Alligator can mean a few different things. Alligator spirit, when I say it that way. There's a difference between the alligator, an alligator, and alligator. When you leave off the and the, you're talking about the spirit animal. So there is this, the message that comes through to me when I tune into that is, yeah, I might look kind of aggressive, but I'm really not. I'm just laying here doing my thing. And this is a suggestion for you, is to not be, even though it might seem fierce and scary, whenever that alligator appears in that way and how they're positioned, like you said, they're not being, jaws after you or something
Attacking. Yeah.
like that. It would suggest the message, one message, and I do say there's probably more, but one message would be the things that appear to be scary on first look aren't that scary. Does that make sense? And that's
Yeah,
got
absolutely.
to resonate with you. When I say resonate, I mean it's a feeling like, oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It feels right. It makes sense. And what was the other one, Diane?
A dolphin.
Oh, dolphin. Yeah, dolphin is about communication. It's also a reminder whenever dolphin shows up is playfulness.
I need to have more fun. See, that's a good
Yeah,
suggestion
that.
right
That's
there.
why dolphin is showing up for
So
you.
keep showing up.
Yeah, you're doing a great job with the podcast and the company. Excuse me, hiccups. You're doing a great job with this, and I think you're doing a great service to the world. And I think you need to be acknowledged for that. By providing these podcasts and these various presenters, such as myself and others, that are bringing information that will click with some people and maybe not with others, but will eventually get the right people to pay attention to the right podcasts. And it's a privilege to be able to do that. Anyway, back to dolphin. Dolphin spirit is one about playfulness, about communication, about working together with others, cooperating with others, of being able to tend to take care of the young. And that doesn't mean, babies, your own babies or something like that, but to really pay particular attention to the young, because dolphins, the physical dolphin, is very protective of their young ones. There's also that element of water that they live in the water, which is, what a trip, but they can't breathe. They don't have any gills or anything to process the oxygen that need. So the other reminder in that, the metaphor is come up for air once in a while.
Now that resonates for sure.
I got that right away when I said that. I went, okay, this is for Diane. So
Yeah.
here's how you do it, though. Again, you ask the question. That's one way.
Mm-hmm.
You can look it up. You can go to do a search or anything like that. Some of my books, Ted Andrews' book, Animal Speak, there's other information out there about what the possible meanings or messages are. And that's fine. However, I'm going to qualify it and say, what I want to see you guys doing, those of you who are listening to this and hearing this, ask. When you get a experience like we've been talking about here, ask, what's the message for me? And just see what happens. That's one of my I probably use that phrase 40 times a day. I don't know, but try it and see what happens. Because I have some expertise, let's put it that way, in this, just a lot of practice and understanding is what I've been called to do. It's an aspect of my work. And I'm really glad to be able to deliver that. And what I want you to work towards by the practice of it is just like what I did, ask, what is dolphin? Okay. And it may be a metaphor for some physic- physical expression of the animal that then becomes like the playfulness, come up for air. Duh, you think about it, it's a metaphor. The dolphin has
Right.
to go up and get the air. So come out of the water, come out of the water. To be in the water itself and to be able to transit between the water and the air, which is basically what they do, implies also that there's a characteristic that you have when it comes to you of being able to be very fluid as necessary. Water, there you go. That's the metaphor. To be able to be very fluid, but also enjoy the sunlight.
There's
And
so much, yeah, there's so much great. I love symbolism. I love the imagery, and how much you can learn. And you share all of this amazing information on, there's past episodes, or people can look this up, find out some other tips. And do you have any other, like a sneak peek of maybe a show you're working on, or a guest you're trying to get, or?
oh yeah, there's a story that I want to write, and that I want to broadcast it, put it on the podcast. It's a little too lengthy to go into in the short time we have, but essentially here where I live in Ashland, Oregon, there was a huge snowstorm, and I'm driving back from San Rafael, in the San Francisco area, and I start coming up the hill, and there's snow plies and everything else. Anyway, my car slid off the road, as I'm going up the hill. Okay, this guy comes along and rescues me. I'll just leave it at that. Just out of the blue. And then guess what? I take off again. The car slides again, so a second time. And I went, oh man, come on! I just about had it. Actually, the guy came then and offered to walk me to the house, which I did. And then I went back to get the car again after it slid off the road twice. And along comes three guys in a truck that had snow shovels. And then instead of bobcats coming along the way here, I'm going, thank you.
You were
Little
sent
miracle.
helpers.
Well, I think that, we started not looking for, but have your eyes and your mind and your heart open to those little miracles like that. I like to call them little miracles. We can be thankful for sure. I was extremely thankful for both instances, the assistance I got. And I'll tell you what the key word in that whole series was? Trust.
I like it.
Trust. And I stayed with that. It was like blinking in my brain, neon lights, trust, trust, trust. And so I've incorporated that a lot more in even my day-to-day stuff when I face a dilemma. So I would want to say to the listeners, and that's the podcast, I'd really like to do that. I will be doing that. I want to get back into recording some more podcasts, and that I think would be number one. The story also suggests the idea there that when you're in a dilemma or do your prayers, thank your guides, whoever that may be. I don't, it doesn't matter to me. You don't have to have animal spirit guides. If you're Christian, call Jesus, it doesn't matter to me. Otherwise it'd be very fundamentalistic about this stuff. And I'm not, but what you do is ask and trust. Thank you. All my prayers tend to be thank you prayers. Thank you for helping me out of this, great spirit or source or whatever name, is given to that. And then, all right, let's see. And occasionally
And you get the answer.
Can you hurry it up a little bit, please?
Yeah, you get the
But
answer.
yeah, just not just wait, but trust.
Trust.
It's not passive. I may be taking some actions, but within those is trust. I was out there shoveling snow too, trying to get out of this ditch. No
It's a
damage,
good
by the way.
reminder. It's a
Yeah,
good
it's good
reminder.
trust. So that's what in answer to your question, I have that one.
Yeah.
That is a really great telling. And that's one of the things, if I may add one piece to that in general. Somebody once said, when you give a principle, give an example.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that guideline. So an example often is a story that clarifies or illuminates further whatever the teaching was. And the
Mhm.
teaching or reminder for me was trust. And oh, by the way, I got a good story about that one.
That's good. Well, people learn from story, right? From as far back as caveman days. That's
Oh,
how
yeah,
information is spread, right? Through story. So it's so
absolutely. The
valuable.
oral tradition. Yeah.
Yep. And what you're sharing, and you've got the beautiful voice too. So that's just icing on the cake when they listen to the podcast. They get to hear you retelling all this and
Well,
sharing
thank you,
your
Diane.
wisdom.
I'm glad that you said that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
The
And
radio
playfulness.
dulcet
By the way,
tones.
dolphins around, so playfulness. Anyway, thank
Well,
you.
I
It's
appreciate
true.
you, spending some time playing with me a little bit here on Facebook and sharing your wisdom. And I want people to follow the show, get it on Apple, Spotify, all podcast apps. Also check it out on mindbodyspirit.fm, Dr. Stephen Farmer, Healing for Your Soul, and dip into some shamanism and see how valuable it can be to add some of these practices to your life. Really powerful. So thank you so much, Stephen. Stay warm in Oregon. And
Bye.
goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.